Welcome, everybody. We're back for our session 4 of the Saranagati Immersive, and we're very excited to hand over to Kishori, Devi, Dasi, and Sudarshan for our afternoon session. If anyone has any questions, please do speak up.
Yes. Dandavats, everybody. Beautiful to see you all again. Can I just mention something really quickly, just by way of congratulating everyone, including ourselves? So, what's fascinating is that the amount of time that an adult can concentrate is shrinking rapidly. But right now, the estimate for adult learning is about 38 minutes of you can actually do something. Hey, we're going into hour 4 today of 6.
That's because you guys are so awesome.
We're significantly outpacing adult, education in the world. So congratulations to everyone.
Very dangerous.
Hare Krishna. So this is my thought. If there's not any kind of comment or question or kind of directional for people, I think there's, this topic is so rich and it's so deep and practical in our life. And it is the primary, you could say, the beginning and the end of practicing life, according to Srila Sridhar Maharaj. In fact, in the beginning of Prapanna Jivanamritam, in his own Sanskrit, he says some extremely radical things that we have to kind of hear and process a little bit. One of the things he says is that Saranagati can give everything. And if you practice the 9 processes of bhakti, the 9 limbs of bhakti, Shravana, Kirtana, Vishnu Smarana, etc., that with Saranagati, then they have value. But if you practice without Saranagati, nothing that you practice has value. And if you only practice Saranagati, then you will receive everything. This is how, the intensity of Guru Maharaj's statements about Saranagati. So this has to be the focus of our practicing life. It is the thing that adds substance to any spiritual practice. And this is from Srila Guru Maharaj himself, Srila Bhakti Rakshaka Sri Tadeva Goswami. Then there's a more ancient commenter on Srimad Bhagavatam, which is another Sridhar Swami. And he also says the same thing, that what gives value to the practicing life is the mood in the devotee of Sharanagati. And Sharanagati means full giving to Krishna. That has to be the basis. Otherwise, everything is mechanical. You're just undertaking a motion with your body. So Sharanagati is what actually adds the conscious substance to practicing life and keeps it from becoming fundamentalist, becoming superficial and mechanical. So we have to engage in this internal motion of surrender as authentically as we can and make it the very beginning of what we do in our spiritual life all the way to the end. And all the way to the end means everything is going to be much more, everything is going to be alive with Sharanagati. Everything is going to be efficient, right? Everything is going to be moving with real conscious intention that's proper with Sharanagati. I think there's one beautiful, I mentioned this multiple times, and I really do think this chapter, it's called Guardian Ruled Family, which is about Gopritve Varanam from Srila Guru Maharaj in Sermons 1 is really, really wonderful. And, kind of a fundamental read for anyone who wants to make actual, authentic spiritual motion within their life. Within this chapter, Srila Sridhar Maharaj explains the process of how to go through what Kishori was talking about earlier, this unscripted existence, right? You can't ever have a book that has every situation that you're going to face in life in the book. What to speak of just for one of us, for all of us, it's impossible. There's literally trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of circumstances that we find ourselves in. And how do you navigate these circumstances as a devotee? How do you make decisions? How do you interact with people? How do you move forward within your life in a way that is faithful and progressive, that is taking to heart my basis as a servant of the Lord and the basis of everything else as existing for his service, as we're faced with different situations in life. We meet someone, we have something asked of us, we need to ask someone something, we need to try to navigate whatever circumstance we find ourselves in. And then we have children, and then we have to help them navigate their circumstances. We have to try to move them forward in their life. And how do we do that in a way that is surrendered? So if everyone's interested in hearing that, I can read a couple pages from the Guardian World Family. And we can kind of maybe think about that and discuss this a little bit, because it's very profound. You know, if you become like a, has anyone read the Talmud or something like that, or the Torah? You know, there's so many scriptures which are very prescriptive, and it's like, do this at this time and hold this with that hand and do that with this one, and they're trying to like cover all these different circumstances of life, and it becomes like absolutely overwhelming, and then inevitably it like devolves into some strange mechanical fundamentalism. And then, like, you know, for example, there's like I grew up with a couple of Jewish kids in Chicago, and then they have all these like workarounds so that they're like actually like following the letter of the rule, but they're, you know, if I keep a little string on me, I'm still within the bounds of my house, even though it's the Sabbath. And so I just make this little string that's around it, and then I can go around and go outside of it, but I'm still in the house and I'm not violating the rule. And there's just like all this stuff that you're like it just becomes like almost like absurd, because the essence has been lost. It's all a statement of surrender to the Lord, not a matter of like mathematically adding up the number of rules you follow so that, you know, if you just do enough, then you're like, yeah, I got into heaven. Oh, that was hard. You know, like you just have this like ridiculously childish idea of the spiritual progression that you're trying to make. So to save us from that, you know, Guru Maharaj is giving us some deeper pointers to make an authentic attempt at life.
Page 171.
So I'm starting at the bottom of page 171. Honestly, the whole chapter is amazing. It's hard to like start somewhere, but Guru Maharaj is talking about what he calls the spirit of independence. And it doesn't mean freedom in this way. It means this thing that really, if I can just do whatever I want, then I'll be happy. That's the spirit of independence. You know, it's this you know, this push, this idea that keeps pushing into, if I literally could just do whatever I want, if everything would just bend around to what I need, then I'd be happy, right? And I think can we all identify that, or is that just me? Like, yeah. So Guru Maharaj is talking about this independence that apparently, because if it is just me, I actually don't think that way. It's not about me.
Theoretically.
He's just theoretically talking about
like this. Yeah. Asking for a friend.
Yeah. This independence that apparently seems to be your friend is really your enemy. You must learn how to live together with others. We're not our own independent, individual, isolated being in an environment that's objects for us to manipulate, which means you're in a living environment filled with variety, filled with diversity, filled with all kinds of lives that are being lived, and a motion that is ultimately for the service of the Lord, a greater motion. We have to learn to live with that. You must learn to live together with others. You cannot separate yourself from the environment. It's not possible. That is death, samadhi, or the infinite slumber. That is no life, that is no answer, that is no solution. Gomar says, your spirit, the funny thing is that your spirit of independence, meaning that your spirit where you want to be the world to do what you want, ultimately makes you the center. And the funny thing is the end of it, it isolates you. You end up by yourself. And really, if you take it to its extreme, you actually have to, you start to like love the idea of getting out of the world, of mukti. You start to love the idea of canceling your own existence. The Guru is saying that is not a solution. You're not going to find any fulfillment in just obliterating your individuality and obliterating your existence, which is the path of, nirvana. That's what it is. It's extinguishment. So Guru is saying that's not the solution. Well, what is the solution? You must live with many. Oh, I messed that up. You must see that you are a part of the whole, and only your spirit of independence is disturbing you. And you must try to save yourself from the hands of your so-called friends. God save me from my friends, my so-called friends. So we have an imposition, a relationship of imposition with the reality. Guru Maharaj is saying, that is what's disturbing you. You think it's the environment that's disturbing you, but actually you're disturbed. And then you're blaming it upon the environment. Only surrender can give you relief, can give you the real higher life. You will be able to understand that from your innermost heart. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has repeatedly hammered this raga dvesha. Apathy and sympathy. Raga dvesha vimuktaistu. Beginning in chapter 2, Krishna says raga dvesha, and then he says raga dvesha many, 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 many times in the Gita. Raga means like a mood, and dvesha means two. There's two things that we kind of separate in our little mental control tower, the inputs into our mind. And it's, I like it, I don't like it. And it's totally unreliable. Totally unreliable. It's very difficult to even conceive of that, but it is completely unreliable. And this raga dvesha, Krishna is saying, this is the whole problem. Reality has its own beautiful flow, and you're experiencing and going, I like that one, I don't like that one. I like that one, I don't like that one. Not that. Totally unreliable. These two are your enemies. Apathy for something and sympathy for something. These are your enemies. Be independent of these two enemies and concentrate yourself toward your guardian. Know that he is not partial. Your first consideration should be the guardian is not partial. I am guardian, but I am friendly to you all. Suhridam sarva bhutanam. Chapter 5, verse 29. That whole verse, so chapter 5 is called Karma Sannyasa Yoga. And the very last verse of Karma Sannyasa Yoga is this verse. Suhridam sarva bhutanam. It's Bhoktaram yagya tapasam sarva loka maheshwaram. Suhridam sarva bhutanam gyatvamam shantim richati. Krishna is saying, if you can understand this, Bhoktaram yagya tapasam. Bhokta means I'm the consumer. Krishna is the consumer of yagya and tapasya. All the burning that's happening in reality. And actually everything in reality is burning. Everything. And Krishna is saying, that yagya, that tapasya, I'm the consumer. Sarva loka maheshwaram, and I'm the supreme lord of all lokas. Loka means planets, loka also means people. Suhridam sarva bhutanam, but I'm your friend. I'm like your heart friend. Suhridam. Gyatvamam shantim richati. If you can know me like this, then you'll come to peace. This whole motion, he's friendly to you. The whole motion of everything is friendly to you. Don't forget that he's your guardian, Guru Maharaj is saying. If you can understand this, then these little likes and dislikes, they won't dominate you. Don't leave this thought. I am your guardian, but at the same time, I am your friend. Don't forget this. Otherwise, there alone is the danger in your whole life. Okay, next paragraph. Be optimistic. Don't be pessimistic. Really sweet idea of life. Your guardian is at the root of reality. Be optimistic. You're good. Everyone around you's bad. Withdrawal from everyone and everything will give you real bliss. Don't be so selfish thinking. That's not the way. You don't need to withdraw. That is your environment. They should be relied upon. They have goodness in them. So try to adjust yourself. Tattenu kampam susamikshimano, which is the verse we said that Guru Maharaj quotes a lot. She's quoting right now. Tattenu kampam susamikshimano. All our situations in life occur by His grace. It's such a beautiful truth. We have to find that fine thread in our life. All our situations in life occur by His grace. Especially try to adjust with the guardian who is at the bottom of all movement and all creation. Have faith in Him, and through Him, approach your environment. So this is the sadhana, this is the practice. Have faith in Him, and through Him, approach your environment. And there's a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam that Guru Maharaj quotes, which is like the verse of how to do this. You should never interact with your environment except as an offering to Krishna. And then when something comes back from you, the environment, it should never come directly to you. It should always go, oh, my Lord is giving me this. My Lord is giving me this, and I'm giving back to my Lord. That's the life Guru Maharaj is advocating. In Srimad Bhagavatam it is said, Sarva Bhuteshu Yah Pashyed Bhagavad Bhavam Atmanaha Bhutani Bhagavatyatman Yesha Bhagavatottama. And this is Guru Maharaj's purport on this verse. We can attain the highest position in this way. Whatever and whoever we come across, we must see at the central interest, not from provincial or local interest. So provincial and local interest means our own little selfish world, right? I don't want to view that person, that interaction, that thing, whatever it might be, this situation, from my own little tiny field. Remember, chapter 13, Krishna saying, Kshetra and Kshetragya. The Kshetra that we have is their own little world that's within our mind, right? And for us, that's our world. But it's actually much more than that. And our world has its likes and dislikes. We're having these inputs. We're passing them through all of our mental patterns. And that's the provincial interest. That's the interest of my own little temporary ego. Guru Maharaj said, don't see things from that perspective. We must see those from the central interest. It means some universal interest is occurring. And when I interact with the circumstance, I'm going to think of it like that. Some larger flow. Go straight to the center. As we've been saying, this is Mahaprabhu, this is Bhagavatam, this is Guru Maharaj. Go straight to the center. Don't interact with the local representation. What's at the bottom of it all? Krishna. So Krishna's saying, Guru Maharaj is saying, go straight to the center when you're interacting with a circumstance. And that is Bhagavad Bhavam. One meaning of the word bhava means relationship. The question is, what's the relationship with Bhagavan? That's Bhagavad Bhavam. Then, Atmanaha. What's the relationship with me? Try to see the center in everything. And then in connection with or through the center, come to approach your environment. First go to the center, and from the center, knowing your relationship with the center, come to adjust with your surroundings and company. Okay. This is actually really huge and really important. I'm just pausing here because this is the way to live in your unscripted, unique life, right? Your absolutely unlegislated life. And your life is going to be unique. We all have and will continue to face absolutely unique circumstances, which we have to navigate. And this is the way to deal with like every moment of life, every moment of life. You know, in the temple, at the little shop, right? Driving in traffic, flying on an airplane, you know, seeing a tree, whatever it is. Like we have to bring this consciousness as much as we can into our actual life.
You want to summarize what you said?
Do you? I mean, I can try.
Yeah, I just think like there's sometimes people say that it feels vague. So I guess my question would be like, does this feel vague? Where it's saying the circumstance comes, and instead of you dealing, can use a person as an example, right? That person is interacting with you, and you may or may not appreciate it. But first, you're passing through. The Lord is putting this circumstance in. So first, some remembrance, right? Then before you deal with that person, that's just an example. There's a million things you can, I'm just for simplicity's sake. Okay. Then you're passing through, what could I do to serve this person? Right? Because there's like a knee-jerk reaction that we have in all of our, environment. And then the knee-jerk reaction we have is some kind of strange like auto pattern.
Sometimes it's not even conscious.
Yeah, it's very unconscious. In fact, like the more you study codexes on like how humans behave, the more you realize that it's very unconscious patterns at play. And they all serve different strange like protection cycles within us, right? So we just have different patterns of like evade, like some people get angry and push out, and some people feel grief and pull in, and some of us disassociate and disappear and float off, right? There's a million ways that we do that. But instead of our pattern responding to that person, because there's almost like an egotistic response of like what we think we're even supposed to say may even come. And then there's like just a very faint pause where you're going, how can I assist? And the Lord has put this circumstance in front of me. So instead of dealing with the person, first there's like a filter that you're overlaying on your life. But this doesn't mean that you're like not having a normal conversation. There's just like a thing of like, oh, may I be utilized? How can I help? Right? Like think of old cultures, right? Like in Thailand where they say sawadee ka is how they say hello, right? And it's coming from this ancient swastika, Suastika, right? This ancient formation of auspiciousness. Su, auspicious, asti, to you, ka. I wish you something wonderful. I offer something wonderful has put me in your proximity, right? Some appreciation for the moment. So you're passing your own mind through a filter and then attempting, and again, like at risk, right? You're just going to try You know, you don't know what's going to happen. You're dealing with real life, which means you haven't scripted what the response is, right? Real interactions mean you don't know what's coming back towards you. But the faithful kind of perspective is, to the extent that I can adhere to what is truthful and good, right? To what is something wonderful, then what comes back to me must also be for my own well-being. So there's like this kind of pause that's occurring, right? So then somebody comes to you and maybe they share something that's happening in their life. You have your obvious response ready to go, maybe even before they're done talking. But then there's like some quick pause. Oh my Lord. And we may even be surprised at what will come out from us. And we may be surprised what that kind of meditation is turning all of our interactions into a meditation, right? And that's what we're saying. Like, we want to be remembering the Lord in all of the interactions of our life. And then we may be surprised. Well, the great thing about this is not relegated to a certain time of day, right? It's not relegated to just when you're a parent, right? These are all like labels that we have, right? If Mahaprabhu himself is saying, I'm actually not a sannyasi or a grihasta or anything, then we certainly aren't stuck being a sister or a mom or a grandma or a parent or whatever else it is. Those are just labels, right? You're going through a myriad of labels in your life, right? That's what's on your tombstone at the end. Like, was 3-4 labels, right? That's not who you were, right?
Your obituary.
Yeah, it is like, yeah, you're a bit like, you know, was a mom left behind, did blank, was hopefully decent.
Did this job.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, but that's not who you are, right? And so now you're going into, when you are doing blank label, when you are mom label, when you are trying all of those things, first they're passing through something else, you know, and that's a very nice meditation where you go, oh Lord, like, because you know what, we will find ourselves in strange waters, right? We'll find ourselves, and you know, the more important the decision, the more you're going to feel that this interaction has necessity. And then the more actually that we turn into it in a deeper way, right? We're going, oh Lord, I actually don't know what to say to this person. I don't know what to do in this situation. Okay, maybe this will please you.
What's my service?
What's my service in this moment? And then try to move from that point. And my own feeling is that this is an extremely valuable and practical. It's not actually super, you know, out there. You're starting to go like, hey, what is the Lord telling me while I'm in the workday and everything that I didn't want to have happen is happening? We really are kind of these master control type. And then to come to this feeling, you know, it's not like the saints are saying, oh, actually, the Lord's very kind. He's pretty nice. You're saying actually what he's giving overflows, and I can't reciprocate with that. It's not just a little bit of mercy. It's actually overwhelming mercy that's occurring, right? And actually, my idea of what was good was so faulty, and what his idea of what is wonderful is glorious. And that's like where you're starting to, oh, okay, divine providence put me with this person. Divine providence put me in this situation. Divine, something wonderful pulled this out. And now I'm going to remember the Lord and try to serve that situation as best I can. That's like some of this actual practicing life of remembrance, trust, humility, right? Accepting and rejecting, which are the other aspects of the limbs of surrender, which accepting and rejecting means there's motion inside of it, right? Some new thing is kind of coming to you, some old things being left behind. Now you're moving into like actually something that has some life inside of it. You're not just memorizing a couple things, and then you just said the thing that you think that they might, no, very live, you know, and many, many wonderful stories. I think like when we watch the old lectures of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, and Srila Guru Maharaj, what they say in response is very surprising time after time after time, right? And you're thinking like, because we almost have an idea of what we think the response could be for that type of question. And even some of these questions they're not like very well formed. Now, some of them are extremely well formed, and it is like our debt to those wonderful people who went across the Ganga and asked Guru Maharaj very heavily meditated upon questions that were weighing on their heart. And those became these books. And that's why we're appreciating them right now, is because of the sincerity of those questions. But some of the questions, if you're listening to the lectures, are not very well formulated. And then what comes in response to even that is a flow of amazing mercy. And it's surprising, right? That's like these sentences. This one sentence, I was listening to a lecture of Guru Maharaj recently, and he said, there's no need to do anything grand or majestic or conquer a kingdom, right? He goes, only some interior change and the kingdom will come to you, right? And you feel like shocked, like this idea of like everything is an internal movement and that motion will come towards you and reveal itself towards you. That's what Sharanagati say. Like the Lord actually can't stop himself from that kind of cracked heart.
It's kind of amazing where Guru Maharaj takes this practice, because the two practices are inverted, right? There's Bhagavan Bhavamatmana, which is the second stanza, then Bhutani Bhagavat Tyatmani, which is the exact opposite. There's Bhagavat Bhavamatmana and then Bhutani Bhagavat Tyatman. So just to finish this practice, my connection with everything and everyone should be ascertained through the center. My relationship with others must be calculated from the central interest, not the local or the partial interest between them. That will be wrong, and that is the root of all evil. The root of all evil is what? Viewing things from the perspective of local or provincial or partial interest, not the absolute interest. The separate relationship is not wholesome. Only go straight. See things through the eye of the interest of the center, and your relationship will descend.
Pretty awesome.
And this is an important principle of Srila Guru Maharaj, because sometimes, we're presented with the different types of rasas. I remember growing up, I grew up in ISKCON Gurukul. And people were, be thinking, well, what are you? It's like, I'm more of a Sakya Rasa, And, then people would be like, well, Vatsalya sounds actually pretty good. Like people are just like saying stuff in this idea of like, oh, I think I know what my relationship with the absolute is. It's very from this position of almost like, like it's almost like a fantasy, you know what I mean? It has no root. But Guru Maharaj is saying, your relationship will descend. You actually have a relationship with this circumstance, and present yourself in a way where you're seeking and searching and want to be utilized properly, and that will descend. Sarva bhuteshu yapashed bhagavat bhavamatmana. So that's that. Next, bhutani bhagavati, and then atmani. Vice versa. What is God's relationship with the thing? What is the thing's relationship with God? And according to that calculation, you come in adjustment with them and your environment. Then you're out of danger. So what's my relationship with the thing? What's my relationship with the Lord? What's the thing's relationship with the Lord? Right? What's God's relationship with the thing? Right. Then make your adjustment. Make your move, what you have to do. Then you're out of danger. But eliminating the central interest, if you want to mix together and get local benefits satisfied in the meantime, you will be in danger. So the environment is not bad. We are suffering from misunderstanding Maya. And this is a really important principle, because sometimes we think that we're in the world of Maya, meaning like Maya is like this objective reality that we happen to be in, right? Like we're in a Maya world. It's like, Maya world has a blue sky. Well, is that Maya? Like, where am I? I am in the Maya world. But what Guru Maharaj is saying is, no, you're suffering from Maya. Meaning, the Maya is in you. We are suffering from misunderstanding Maya. Nate vidu svarga gatim hi Vishnum. That misunderstanding should be cleared. We shall try to live anywhere and everywhere, and we shall see the environment as all loving. If we have that deep vision to see who is at the basis of all of us, if we find him. It is also mentioned in the Upanishads, in pure consciousness, one can see nectar everywhere. In the wind, in the ocean, in the plants, in the stars, everywhere. The beautiful vision of life, that's actually what's happening. But some total misalignment is occurring within us that has to be cured with this mood of Saranagati and this vision that everything is serving him and that I want to be properly utilized in that way. And then suddenly the real nature of everything becomes clear. Guru Maharaj is saying, I mean, this Upanishadic vision, nectar is everywhere in the wind, in the ocean, in the plants, in the stars. And then Guru Maharaj's next sentence, try to recognize that your situation is full of honey, nectar. That's an amazing sentence. When he's saying, try to recognize that, he's saying, this is your practice. Try to recognize that your situation is full of honey, full of nectar. Don't try to see only the outer cover. Your vision must be deep enough to see the real position. Then you will find everything is like nectar to you. Shrinvantu Vishve Amritasya Putra. It's a very ancient Vedic aphorism. This clarion call is coming from Veda. You are a child of nectar. Attempt to listen to my words. You are really sons of the nectar lake. Why should you be like poison? Are you a poison unit? Are you now downtrodden to become units of poison? Your real, innate self. You are a drop in an ocean of nectar. Shrinvantu Vishve Amritasya Putra. Awake, arise. Arise to your self-consciousness that you are a drop of the nectar ocean. Try to realize it. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. In this amazing chapter, it goes on, to describe the proper relationship with the environment, the proper relationship with beauty, and ultimately to see that everything is existing to serve his play. And Guru Maharaj, in this lecture, he sings the whole kirtan of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which is Radhakunda Tata Kunja Kutira, Govardhanapad, Varbharta Jamuna Tira. All these things are existing all to serve his play. And to every extent, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Venu Shringa Padachinna Meghamala. Like, Meghamala means like how the clouds are formed in the sky. Like everything is like perfectly serving him. Right? That vision of the environment. Now, these are high things, But we have to start with our own relationship with our own life and start to view it not from the tiny provincial world of selfish hell, but as the opportunity to participate in the service of the Lord and to try to find that. What is the relationship with what's around me, and how am I to contribute? Right? Instead of viewing everything from this tiny, reactive, selfish plane of hell. Like, oh, no, this happened, and now that guy's like, yeah, all these narratives that form in our head, and they're all totally unreliable, totally not actually what's happening. So that deeper vision is something we have to bring within us, and then in a very, in a way that's like natural. Try to ask, what's my service? Oh, a new situation's come. Instead of going into your, we may have a mental pattern that is lasting for lifetimes, where some certain situation comes in, and it's like my immediate reaction to that situation is I'm going to get angry, right? And immediately here comes the situation, and I can just feel it like I'm getting angry. You're not like that.
Sympathy for us to accept who we
Yeah. So, it's like, but if you can bring the Lord in and start to replace with Krishna consciousness these patterns, and we're going to say, oh, Krishna has given me this situation. Okay, smile. Like one time, Gurudev was emphasizing that actually you should smile. And one time, actually one time he was with a sannyasi, and this sannyasi was never like very disturbed by this particular circumstance. And Gurudev said, Maharaj, smile. And the Maharaj is like, I'm not going to smile. Like, and then Gurudev said, well, then have surgery and make your face into a smile. But we have to take that in that mood. You ever see when you're around like a devotee, it's like this thing where it's like, no matter what's happening, they're just going like they're in this like place where it's like, it's all amazing. And we don't know that vision, but we know that they know that vision. And we know that that is what they're trying to give to us. There should be an initial reaction of faith and readiness to contribute to any situation we find ourselves in. That should be our thing. Oh, Krishna, what's my service? Not like, oh no, then this thing happened again. And like this is like it's like a self-perpetuated hell. It doesn't have to be that way. And so that internal process, again, this is just such a key point, and we'll keep saying it because it's valuable. And I'm also telling it to myself. Bahiranga, the outward flowing current, the external Shakti, right? Bahiranga Shakti is saying your feelings are dependent on the arrangement of the objects in the external environment. Whether you feel good or bad is dependent on those arrangements. And Antaranga Shakti is saying, no, your feeling is coming from Akila Rasamritamurti, is coming from Krishna. And you have to go inside to find that relationship. Right? So you're going to be constantly in this paradigm where you're absolutely dependent on the external environment for how you feel, and then on this quest to arrange the external environment in such a way where you think, if I just arrange it in this way, then I'm going to feel how I want to feel. And the whole thing is a canard. It's a wild goose chase. Because actually, the real world is within. So Guru Maharaj is giving us this internal practice. Adjust your relationship with the circumstance within. Find your service to the Lord. And that is when your real relationship, your real service can descend, right? What is your actual relationship with this circumstance you find yourself in? So none of these things are meaningless. There's not a meaningless moment in life. Another class I was listening to, which is only audio, I haven't seen it transcribed. The Srila Guru Maharaj is saying, any sound that you hear, any sight that you see, you should think, oh, Krishna wants me to hear this sound. What's my service? Like, it's so nice. Like, every single thing that passes through into your conscious awareness, into the awareness of your mind, and it might be very limited, but whatever comes into it, we should think, oh, Krishna wants me to hear this. What's my service? Like, really nice idea of life. And it's not just an idea. And ultimately we have to know, and within ourselves, not in like a theoretical philosophical way, but within ourselves, this is not an idea. It really is coming from the Lord. And all these kinds of things, we have an existence of service. We have something to participate and contribute to the circumstance we find ourselves in. And that's why we're in it. And it contains progression, and it contains service, it contains positivity, it contains the thing that we're looking for. So, the mind is saying, oh, I need to make the external environment like this, like this, like this, like this, like this. But the internal path says, what Krishna puts me in, what the situation that the Lord gives me, that contains the progression that I'm looking for. And actually, I don't even know what progression I need to make because I don't even know what my own problems are. And the solve to that is also coming from the motion and the progression of the life I find myself surrounded by. So I wanted to share that internal practice that Srila Guru Maharaj is giving us from Srimad Bhagavatam. And, it's also for my own edification. Sometimes we read these wonderful things. We're like, oh, yes. Then the next thing you know, it's like it just happened on Friday. Was it Friday? Whenever it was. I was telling Devi Prabhu, like, oh, we got an opportunity to practice Saranagati on. It was like we had this whole problem with the airline in Portugal, and then they wouldn't let us on their plane. Then they wouldn't get us on another plane. They wanted to charge us 2,000 euros and all this stuff, and then we ended up having to pay that. And then my first reaction was just like, "What you gotta?" Okay, smile. The Krishna serve. What's the way forward? Because all these things happen in life, and there's meaning to it, and that's humility. Because when you try to analyze it too much, you're gonna be like, well, where's the service in this? How is it good that I got to pay 2,000 euros? And you're gonna like start arguing with reality inside your own paradigm, and like, you know what I mean? And it's like humility means I don't know how it was good, and that's okay. It's good, and I'm searching for my service, right? And then all of a sudden, all this junk is like, it's not a part of you. You don't have to have that relationship with reality. And by the grace of Guru, we can sort of make little baby steps toward this ideal. And guess what? Life is going to help you. Life's going to help you make the baby steps because it's going to give you your next baby step quicker than you think. Hare Krishna. Okay.
Does anyone have any questions for Sudarshan Prabhu or Kishori Didi?
Not necessary.
If not, I can ask some.
What about online?
Okay, just Nazar.
Yes.
Okay. So he's saying Dandavats. So Sharanagati is a mood setup to accept each situation in the best.
Is the best.
Is the best.
That's right. I mean, do you want to? Okay. I mean, I can give my perspective on this. Actually, Sharanagati, the truth of reality is that the Lord is our friend. And Sharanagati is the practicing life. Okay, if you say, how would you live if you knew that the cause of reality and the designer of your destiny is your friend? That way of practicing that is called Sharanagati. And it's actually the truth. It's not just a practice. The designer of your destiny is your friend. And that's the words of Guru Maharaj. And it's the truth. The designer of your destiny is your friend. And that has to be known in a very deep way, because otherwise, what are you doing? Right? Like Guru Maharaj says, if you have suspicion, you cannot surrender. Not only that, you should not surrender, right? If you don't know that your Lord is your friend, you won't surrender. And he is your friend. So if the designer of your destiny is your friend, how do you live? The answer to that question is Sharanagati. That's how you live. It means you're gonna make subdued your accumulated karmic pattern, your samskara. You're gonna subdue that in deference to that higher vision. And you're going to adjust to that circumstance with that higher vision. That's what Sharanagati is. So the answer to the question is yes, right? We have to live like that because it's actually the truth. And if we can actually find that for real, like if we can find that, the truth of that, Guru Maharaj says, then you made progress in life, right? And particularly like in Sri Guru and His Grace, in this particular version, it's on page 79. In the original version, I think it's on page 40, 46 or something, is the surrounded by karma thing. Particularly, Guru Maharaj is saying, unless you experience that, the mercy of an adverse circumstance, the progression that's contained in the thing that I did not want to have happen. Right? I went through something that was not part of my plan, that was difficult. And I tried to find the mercy of the Lord. And by accepting that and moving through it, felt some unwanted thing leave me and some new self emerge. That has to be felt. It has to move out of the realm of theory. We actually have to do this in our life, like for real. And then if Guru says, if you've done that, I mean, I'll just read his words. So it's probably better than my
79. 79 in this. Yeah,
surrounded by karma. We must not be afraid of any adverse circumstances. Because what happens is when you actually practice this and you realize that everything is happening is good, fear disappears. That Krishna really is the source of reality, and there's no need to fear anything. Everything is good. The only thing that's coming is good. We must not be afraid of any adverse circumstance. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, a happy kshatriya hankers for the battle you're facing. Sukhina kshatriya partha labhante yudham idrisham.
Come on, it's a cool verse. Sukhinam Satriya Partha. It's like a happy warrior hungers for battle, right? So like we're dealing with things in the retrospective a lot of the time, right? So it means like you have to adjust yourself with what's happened in the past and reconcile that. And then we're anxious that maybe those patterns from the past are going to happen in the future and there's more suffering on the menu, like in the future horizon. But for connoisseurs of consciousness, you're hungry for the next battle that's actually coming towards you. Sukhinam Kshatriya Partha is like, he's a happy warrior, hungers for battle. He's not going like, oh no, another battle's coming, right? Like, you're a great warrior. That's what you exist for. Ultimately, at the end of this conversation that happens on the battlefield, a massive war happens. We don't know what our calling is going to be. We don't know what actually the Lord wants us to walk into. But what we want to do is walk into it with courage, right? We want to walk into it with some dignity, like Dignity of the Divine Servitor is a very nice name for a book, right? That there's actually some sovereignty and dignity inside of the soul. And like this, the name of this book that's so amazing, right? It's like, how do you live in eternity? So maybe in the beginning, there is some idea that it's like you're placing a mood on top of yourself, maybe, right? Because we don't see that it's actually all good, and our mind is crashing around all over the place. And you're going like, hey, we're gonna live by a more important principle, right? So then you're going, okay, humility is the beginning. I don't know all the things that are supposed to happen. The reason I'm fried out right now is because I'm super attached, right? Bhagavad Gita is super clear actually on what creates anger, right? We have desires. The desires that we want don't happen. Boom, right? Like bomb. That's what happens, is the thing that we're desiring very much doesn't happen. Humility is injecting this idea of uncertainty into our desire. Okay, something bigger than me is now acting on me. How am I to adjust to that? I don't know the purpose of it. I don't know why I'm suffering like this much. I don't know why my mind is careening around all over the place. But ultimately, this moves from a point where you're kind of like trying to stick on something on top of yourself to the very way that you are, right? It becomes who you are. So yes, just once. And so this book is talking about, if you exist in eternity, what actually has the depth to give you endless feeling? What actually gives you endless motion? You're on a journey towards the infinite. I'll tell you what, all of the stories that we hear of people that are very dear to the Lord are leading very dramatic existences. It does not become like low. Like, it doesn't mean the volume goes down. Okay? Participation, and in Upadeshamrita, it is alluded to. At some point on the surrendered soul's journey, you're going to get the chance to participate. Means that card's going to be dealt towards you at some point in time, right? You're going to have some chance to interact, right? That's what this kind of idea of like start to like atrophy and give of yourself, right? At some point in time, you have some contribution to make. We know it's very rare. We know Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is saying, I'm trying to offer a flower. So we know contribution towards the infinite is rare, but most glorious, most wonderful. And what else are you going to do with your life but look for the most wonderful thing, right? Which is try to contribute of something. It's not super special to think of all the things that you want. You're starting to veer into unusual territory by saying, oh, maybe I could try and contribute of myself. But then if you are living for eternity, what's the thing that's going to give you fuel? Right? At a certain point, like if you told someone like, you need to wake up at 4:00 in the morning every day, that's not hard for them anymore. That's not like, whoa, a huge sacrifice is occurring. And like, or you tell them, okay, maybe don't eat that kind of food anymore. At certain point in the stage, that might be the biggest thing that person has ever done, is maybe not eat some kind of food. And at a certain point, it's like so negligible, that's not progress for them anymore. So what's the thing that's going to all of a sudden give you motion? At whatever part on the journey you find yourself, in whatever peculiar crossroads that you find yourself. So in the beginning, when we say, okay, I just have to go, every situation that's occurring is occurring by His grace. But then to kind of continue, Nazar, with your question, it's not like something that we have to like slap on top of and peer into. There are people that are actually seeing God's grace in that situation. And in the live moment, they're seeing it and participating inside of that moment, right? Parikshit Maharaj, He's in a moment that most people are going to say, this is the worst thing. You just heard you're going to live for 7 days, right? And immediately moving into that moment. And then what's coming out of that? The entire nectar of the Bhagavatam is coming out of this story. So what happens when you move into that moment that's come to you? Right? And then you don't have to just like be like smacking our head like, he's kind, he's merciful, he wants good for me, even though I can't see it, I can't see it, I can't see it. Like, at some point in time, all of us, and I would venture to say every single person in this room and probably online, has gone through some circumstance that they definitely didn't want. And something unusual came out of that. And so then you have to go, if this, then that means the event horizon opened up. The conversation's much larger. You have to apply that thing and go, oh, I experienced my mind crashing around. I experienced exactly what I didn't want to happen. And some strange motion happened inside of my own interior that I didn't know existed, that I didn't know how to want. Right? All of these kirtans, actually, they're all moods of Sharanagati that are coming out. Sometimes it's very happy. Sometimes it's like, oh, can you believe how kind our Lord is? Sometimes there's like, do you even realize what a failure I am? And Lord, I'm doing my job as the most fallen, and you have to be the most merciful because like it's getting dark over here. I can't control my mind, all the scripture. I'm blind to what's good for me. All these moods are starting to come out in the songbook of throwing yourself towards the infinite, right? And then it has to be some positive motion. So then at some point in time, we're not just rectifying the past, right? Which is very important. And actually, from India is coming this very sophisticated world. We're saying this word Sharanagati. In English, it's translating to surrender. The compound word is coming to home. And then we're saying, actually, there's these components of surrender. So you go, oh, actually, this is a very sophisticated world, a connoisseur of surrender, actually, you can say. That this is so rich that it has the ability to get you through everything. Like, the umbrella is wide. It doesn't get more comprehensive, actually, than Sharanagati. Sharanagati has the ability to pierce into the depths of hell. There is nowhere that this substance doesn't create motion. So that's why I say, because we're not going to actually sanitize our way back to Godhead. And we're not going to figure out all of the different shadows that are afflicting us, shine a light bulb on each one of them, carefully disperse of them, and remember, not messily. You know, it's like very messily in public. And then maybe some truth comes to us, right? There's like a sentence that says one gunslinger recognizes another. Because when I was little, I kept on going like, how are they saying to recognize who is a sadhu? Like, it's so confusing. And then it says one sadhu recognizes another sadhu. And you're like, well, that's so complicated. Like, how are you supposed to do that? And then you see this sentence that says one gunslinger recognizes another. Means there is a vocabulary that is being articulated in here. And to the extent that you're throwing yourself into that vocabulary, it's blooming into life, right? And then all of these things start to go from being like ephemeral, vague, and strange, and like, what are you talking about? Like surrender, you know, like some strange posture of like, you know, like giving up, into this very sophisticated world that's rich and full of life. And then you're starting to see prayer after prayer. This entire book is broken into the 6 limbs of surrender. And these are such amazing souls that are so kind to have shared their words in metered, condensed verse for us to contemplate. That's really the thing about verses that are so nice, actually, is that they make it in a memorizable, rhyming, like motion. There's a musicality to it, you know, and now you're getting something to grab onto. And then when are you going to grab onto it? In the beginning, it's only when you're suffering, right? But Sukhinam Kshatriya Parta means at some point in time, you're not just grabbing onto this when you're, this is the life. This is the juice. You're like, okay, whatever you want to put, that's where a prayer, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Nadanam Najanam Nasunam Kavitam Vajagarishta Kamaye. I'm done bargaining with where I'm trying to figure out where I should be. You know where I should be. And wherever that is in the spectrum of whether it's called heaven or whether it's called hell or whether it's an animal or whether it's any of these mystical powers, liberation from my own karmic circumstance. What kind of prayer is that? Right? Because we're thinking like, okay, if I could just like make it to heaven and be like relieved of all the things that are like weighing me down, like these heavy stones that I'm like carrying this burden of stones with me. And that prayer is not saying I don't even ask for those things to be gone. I accept. I radically accept absolutely everything that you have designed in this circumstance. And I am not even putting a timeline on for how long I'm going to accept it. And if we can start to just even say these words out loud, then you're starting to feel like a different type of sovereignty that's coming inside of you. That's what they're saying. You will be allowed into the world of free. You will be actually interacting with things. And what that person, that type of sadhu, what they do will actually ripple into the hearts of people. What's going on with this mystical cow in the different yugas, right? Every yuga, like one leg gets cut, right? It's this kind of like Vedic story. And in the golden age, the first thing that gets cut is what? Compassion. We know it. Very strange times that we live in. Very like strange for someone not to naturally feel some empathy for another person. That's the first thing that gets cut. All of them get cut. This cow, this like, kind of mysterious mythical cow, it's standing on one leg. It's the truth. That's the last thing. So despite all of the unlimited lies that are permeating the ethers, that are permeating like our vision, all these things, what resonates inside of your heart? The truth. It's the only thing that actually ever will resonate inside of your heart. And we're all hoping to come into some proximity of the wavelength of truth. That's all we're doing. All the different, songs and bells and kirtans and waking up and sleeping and cooking, all these things, that I may come closer to the truth. And that I may let that the truth may utilize me. That I become in harmony with the truth and become utilized. And become swept by that. And I will not be less for that. My satisfaction is inside of being inside of that wavelength of truth. That's what we're talking about with dignity of the divine servitor. It's this very energetic posture of delightfully and wonderfully accepting with joy whatever the Lord has provided as that circumstance. And to pray for that vision to actually pour over my own eyes.
So I haven't attended all the sessions so far, but this afternoon I got the chance to learn more about Saranagati briefly, but yes, in a very beautiful way by Maharaj. And my question based on that is, can Saranagati and free will coexist?
Nice question.
Very nice.
And also, second query is that there's an element of contribution. Krishna wants us to look at the macro picture, that we shouldn't be just thinking about our own selfish interest, dealing with or reacting to a situation, right? But we need to look at the overall contribution of our as small drops in the big ocean, and how to make a contribution in a particular situation in a positive manner. But then what if the other party, the stakeholder, a person or a community, they are trying to be nasty or rude? So what way I could contribute or turn that situation around, which pleases Krishna and not just my selfish core self? Thank you.
No.
It's a very developed question and it's really nice.
The first question was, is there a conflict between the conception of Saranagati and the conception of free will?
Yeah.
And then the second question is, if when we find ourselves in a circumstance we're trying to practice Saranagati, there's a third party that I'm dealing with who's maybe inimical, who may have some bad intentions, They may be doing something that appears wrong. And how do we, in the course of as a expression of Saranagati, deal with something where we want to change what that person is doing, right?
Was that the question?
Yes. So, I mean, I can try to answer the first question. Is there conflict between Saranagati and free will? Actually, Saranagati is the ultimate utilization of free will, because Saranagati can only be entered into freely. Krishna is very, very actually careful of Arjuna's free will. If you read Bhagavad Gita, he's always saying, do what you want. I've told you this, now do what you want. I've told you this, now do what you want. Right? He's telling Arjuna, right? So we have the option of directing our consciousness in many, many ways. In fact, in some ways, we don't understand the repercussions of what we do when we direct our consciousness. So we start to exploit the environment, and we ended up, developing all kinds of mental patterns that are not helpful to us. But we did that. And we have to ultimately understand that the only reason why we have all these issues that we have is because of myself. Not only is a Saranagati an expression of free will, it's also an acknowledgement of free will that I have the issues that I have. Full radical responsibility. And some people don't like to hear that. I'm in the messed up position that I'm in because of myself. But it's actually the only empowering position that there is. Mm-hmm. If you're not in the position you're in because of yourself, then what is it? You're a victim of a circumstance that you can't control. And now you're just in this permanent state of victimhood, which is, first of all, the opposite of truth. But secondly, it's completely unempowering. There's no reason to even have a conversation. You're just a victim, right? If you don't have free will, then how can you make any difference in yourself elevating or downgrading yourself? And why am I talking to you? Right? You have free will. Free will is the fundament. In fact, Guru Maharaj says there is the word consciousness and the word free will are synonymous. There is no individuated consciousness without free will. So we have to know this. The samskara that we find ourselves in is through the misuse of our free will. And by the grace of Guru Vaishnava, we can start to use our free will properly. But it takes will. It takes intense refinement of your desire, your intention, your determination in order to actually practice this. And you will actually know who you are as an individual being by engaging in this life of practice much more than you were before. In fact, when you're dominated by your senses and your urges, it feels like you have free will, but actually you're enslaved to a slave master that will never give you one break. You want to go serve your senses? You just signed up for a life of slavery that will never give you one day off. Right? So actually the highest expression of free will is to move into relationship with the Lord. But that's a choice, and it's an intention that has to be reinforced and reinvigorated. So the free will is fundamental to Saranagati. Otherwise, what is love? The whole point of free will is for you to choose love. But in order to choose love, you have to be able to not choose love. Right? That's what it is. That's why love is valuable. It's because you can choose it. It's a beautiful question. Just one more thing I'll say on this topic is when you read Gita again and again and again and again, one of the things that becomes very clear is that Krishna is emphasizing the importance of intention, and that we as a conscious being have to learn to direct our intention. And that's the most refined expression of free will, is to direct our intention. We actually have an intention that can guide our existence. And to embark on that journey of understanding what's my intention, why am I doing what I'm doing, and to prioritize one thing over another, right, is to start to actually have, to exert some will in our life. And when you have some understanding of your will, to willingly turn that over to the higher quarter, then it means something, right? You have something to give, which is yourself, and it's meaningful. So it's not a conflict. It's a willing use of your free will as a contributor to reality, in a space where you have the option to not do that. Yes. And then as far as the someone who's inimical, there's a very interesting circumstance. What comes to my mind is one passage where Srila Guru Maharaj is speaking about humility as an aspect of Saranagati. And Guru Maharaj, ultimately he says these wonderful things. Humility is being open to infinite possibility. And ultimately, humility means to have deference to the desire of the Lord. But then he says, how that humility manifests can be in many ways. And the example that he gives after that is Hanuman burning down Lanka. So humility in this sense doesn't mean that you're taking this kind of passive physical posture. It means you're humble to that higher will. And what that higher will desires, you will carry it out. So Guru Maharaj is saying, Hanuman burning down Lanka was an expression of humility. Now that's not to say if you have some conflicts with somebody, you're going to go like burn them, burn that down. But it means that it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to just kowtow to whatever some person wants to impose or anything like that. It means that you're not searching to fight with that person, and you're also not searching to not fight with that person. You're searching for what is the will of the Lord without desire, without our own mental short-term small imposition, right? If the desire of the Lord is for us to engage in some conflict, then the devotee won't shy away from conflict. In Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna's ethical calculation is, I should not engage in this conflict. And the whole Gita is Krishna saying, no, the proper expression of Saranagati is you engage in this conflict. Right? So whether it's to engage or to not engage in a conflict, that's not what we're searching for. We're searching for what is that will. And it's a fine thing. A very fine thing. And, we can say, in our young practicing life, some circumstances we just have to make decisions, but sometimes there's a very difficult decision. And we have to decide, and Guru Maharaj says, there's a process of doing this. Right? You want to consult Shastra. You want to consult the higher Vaishnavas. And you also want to consult your friends, your peers. Right? But ultimately, you have to be hearing these things. Right? You have your wheel on the ship. Right? And you're going to have to turn. You're going to have to go with some direction. You can give that decision over to the higher devotee, or you can turn the wheel as you like, but you have that free will. And we have to be sincere and honest and question our own motives and refine our own intentions and really engage in these important parts of spiritual life. They're not to be glossed over. They're the most fundamental thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But Arjun was very lucky. He had Krishna next to him.
Oh, that's pretty lucky, wasn't it? Yeah, but we also have Krishna. Bhagavad Gita is passing down over the years and years and years and years, and we're reading it now and receiving so much guidance from it, because there's not one of us that's not facing our own battle in life. You know, he's facing Kurukshetra, but we're also facing our own battles. And it's just as relevant. And in the end, Gita reaches the same conclusion. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Sharanam. It has to be Saranagati. We want to turn ourselves over to the Lord, to that higher good, the absolute good. And we want to become a practitioner of that. Hare Krishna.
We have a question from Lavanya Mai, our Lavanya Mai here in London. She's saying, is it a fine line between pure devotion and sahajaism, or a more obvious one? And how can we check for these symptoms in ourselves? And if we see some symptoms, how can we rid ourselves of these low traits? And in relation to the mind, what is the actual healthy state of the mind? What is its actual use?
That's the actual use of the mind.
Nice. Okay, well, Krishna likes to talk about the mind in Bhagavad Gita. Udared atmanatmanam natmanam avasharayat atmaiva hyatmano bandhu ripur eva natmana. Mind is the best friend. So that has to be the good function of the mind. The best friend side. Or the worst enemy. And like, people like to get really into, like, what is this thing that's going on? And the truth of the matter is, we are very unacquainted, actually, with this field that we're in. All we know is the mind is a lot more powerful than we think it is, and it's a lot less powerful than the Lord. So it's simultaneously much more and much less. And that's the problem of distortion, right? Is that we've got the one is conflated too big and the other one's conflated too small. And then also, I think in the conversation of Yudhisthira with Dharmaraj, he has a conversation. His father is the god of death. And he talks about certain aspects of wonders of the mind, right? Like, what's the most surprising thing, right? The most surprising thing is everybody's making plans, time is the cook, and everybody's heading towards death. So there's some strange kind of forgetfulness that's hitting the mind. And then he says, actually, for a peaceful mind is the man who doesn't have debt, right? There's these kind of, things that are being said. But the fact that the mind can be the best friend, that's good news. That means that this thing can actually be incredibly helpful. So then when we're hearing in Gita, when we have lots of desires and the desires don't happen, then we get hit by anger, then we lose what? Intelligence. And he goes, how can such a man ever be happy? So there's disasters on the journey that are also there. And this idea of offering your mind and that it's a tool is also helpful, and that the scriptures and songs are actually speaking to the mind is very unusual. It's common in the East and it's uncommon in the West, right? So they're saying, oh my brother, oh my dear mind, oh my mind, oh my mind. They're speaking to their mind. So then you're thinking with your mind and you start to realize, I'm actually not just my mental system. What I am is a unit of consciousness. I'm a soul on a journey. And the mind is just like one of the different things that's occurring. That's very helpful, right? Because otherwise you just think you are your likes and dislikes, and you're not. That's why the mind isn't like 100% reliable. So that also comes into aspect of what the mind is. That's why he's saying, oh my mind, like listen to this good news. Surrender to the lotus feet of Nanda Maharaj. And what will happen? All fear goes away, right? What do you do if you're not actually crushed by fear? Well, isn't that a good question? What would you do in your life if you're not completely fearful all the time? What are the words that you would say? What are the actions that you would do? What kind of truth would you be willing to actually try and expose? So there's some faculty that's not exactly who we are that can become part of this kind of engine, if you will, that's like the avatar that we're in, right? That's the good thing about video games, is they made the word avatar like really accessible. Okay, we all arrived with a certain style of mind and all these different kinds of senses. So what's the faculty of the mind? The first question I didn't answer, I'm saving it for Sudar. Is it obvious? What is the difference between pure devotion and sahajya?
I'll just say something quickly on the mind, that when we read the songbook, and we have a beautiful Gaudiya Gitanjali by the grace of the devotees and Srila Gurudev, many of the poets they'll either say mon or they'll say bhai in the song, and when they're saying bhai, which means brother in Bengali, they're actually speaking to their mind. And it's this position of metacognition where there's a you that's higher than your mind, that's observing your mind and saying, hey dude, why don't you try and get it together a little bit? That'd be great. Excuse me, I mean, but it's a little bit kind of like that. It's like, remember, they're, bhaja bhaja bhai chaitanya nitai sudri dhavi shastra kori, right? Like, he's like, hey bhai, why don't you worship Chaitanya Nitai? So the mind is very interesting, because we find ourselves in this position where we have to be in charge of it. And that's what Krishna's saying, like, you better direct this thing or it's going to direct you. It's running. And the ideal is the most important thing, and the ideal that's placed in the faculty of your intelligence, which means buddhi. Okay, buddhi means intelligence, means you have to organize your intelligence around the highest possible thing that you can find. And all the Vaishnava teachers was that. Search the world, search the infinite, search the encyclopedias, search whatever you want. Find the highest possible thing that you can dedicate yourself to. Organize your intelligence around that, and with that intelligence, push your mind in the right direction so it can help you there, right? So the mind is difficult, but there are things that there's a faculty inside of you that's a little bit more than that. And even more than buddhi is your soul. The soul is the thing that's giving energy to all of that. So, another passage by Guru Maharaj is, you have to know all these things, not in theory. Guru Maharaj said, you should understand the sensory inputs coming in, it being reflected in your mind making judgments upon it. This ability within you to have this higher thing that can tell that thing, hey, why don't you shut up for a minute? And no, I know you don't want to do this, but we're still going to go do that. You know what I mean? Like that buddhi, that higher intelligence that's saying, you can whine all you want, but we're going to go over here. Right? I mean, like, even to do something like this, it's like, okay, you got Saturday afternoon. You're going to have all kinds of everybody has stuff to do, right? It's Saturday after, it's a weekend, right? We all have a million responsibilities and other pushing things, right? Every one of us had to have a little conversation with our mind and be like, hey buddy, you know what we're doing today? Yeah, I know, I already know all that stuff you're saying. We're still going here, right? Like, that is a part of it, and it should not be theoretical. You have to understand, oh, hey, I can hear you again, mind. But remember, I have a high ideal. I have my wisdom, and I'm dedicating it to Gauranga Mahaprabhu. I'm dedicating it to this higher purpose in my life. And in that way, your mind can be oriented toward that. And ultimately, it can be brought into, hopefully, being in a position of a friend. But the soul and the intelligence and the soul has to be the victor in that battle. And sometimes we need help, and that's the position of Saranagati. Sometimes we just make that plea, oh, my mind is out of control, and I can't even control it, and I can't do my sadhana, and I can't do my bhajan. I mean, one song of such touching surrender is Prapancha Poriya Agati Hoya Na Dekhi Upaya, right? Like this expression of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's like, I'm swamped by my minds and my senses. I'm having so much trouble controlling them, right? All these kinds of things where no matter what our position, we can always beg for the mercy of the Lord. And we should never feel that away from that. In the end, we don't want to just conquer this ourselves. We want to conquer this in relation to the higher devotees and to service to the Lord. Okay, so that's that.
Just one thing, there was an aspect of it that had to do with mental health. It's very helpful, or at least it's helpful for me, to understand actually that the mind is not super consumed with happiness. It's more of a control tower, right? When you're kind of like going through the layers of what you are, the nature of the mind is to be a control tower, right? And so once you start to realize that that's what it is, it's not consumed with finding ecstasy or happiness. That's something much deeper inside of you. And then that's permeating out of there, right? So the ego and the mind have like one kind of job that they're doing, and it's this kind of straight, clumsy job of self-preservation and control, right? And then what the sadhus are saying is actually there's a much larger control tower, and if you can align yourself with that, right, with the super subject, then you'll feel relief from your minor tower, okay? And when it comes to mental health, we have to understand that control tower is actually going to be the source of a tremendous amount of anxiety to us when it's not aligned properly. That's why I'm saying best friend, worst enemy, like both, right? Like torture device. And in fact, we know that's one of the like main reasons that you start to go like, oh, everything externally looks like it's going great. Internally, mind is crashing all over the place. Like we all have experienced it and observed it in varying degrees, right? Everything's by gradation, right? Some person, you may see them, they have everything you ever thought you wanted. And they may throw themselves in front of a train. You don't know what's going on in that internal dialogue. This idea of I'm actually not even the master of my own body, right? Actually, what I am is for the Lord too, right? I'm going to try and offer this mind. That's also Saranagati. My mind is crashing around because I'm so distrustful of absolutely everything that the Lord has planned that I'm flailing with like a death rattle. Right? Because it's like, it's kind of glamorous, like when you say, oh, die to live. And it is. Every time you say it, it's cool. Because there is something in us that wants to be resurrected, right? There is something cool. But like we get the tiniest, like faintest scratch on our ego. It was like, no, I didn't mean die like that, right? And all of a sudden, like the ego's death rattle, like it's uncertain, like everything's careening, like tornadoes going on internally, like everything has hit instability on every level. Like these are like, they're very romantic and wonderful things to contemplate, and then real life happens, and we're just like the rug has been pulled very heavily. And it's so humility inducing, right? Like it's just like, oh, I'm so unconscious on such a like core level actually of your grace and your kindness. So then this control tower of the mind, it becomes more and more neurotic. That's the problem, right? It's not that like if you indulge in a like remember all like most cognitive therapy, if you're going to talk about mental health, they don't say like, yeah, when you leave the room, you should flick the light switch 17 times because that does mean good luck for your day. Okay? But I'm very serious, right? Doesn't mean that you take the sponge on the table 3 times and then the light switch 17 times and the shoes need to be on the left side, not the right side. But your mind is going to take you on that journey. And what is that journey ultimately? It's control. Right? If I flick this switch a certain amount of times, like then that means the day is going to be like this. And all of a sudden, this pattern of existing has all of a sudden like gotten a little fuel. So therapy is not saying, yeah, do that, and then find a few more rituals to add like that. What they're going to say is, are you willing to be humble to the lowest extent where you can make progress? This is a very intense thing. Because when we're trying to make change in our lives, we're shooting very high. We want to change 10 habits. We want to change our whole sleep structure, our whole mental pattern, our whole eating structure, our whole exercise structure, our parenting vibe, and our work at the same time, right? Like you're just like, I need to go through this. And then we try like one 18-hour day, and then we're like, wow, I'm actually exhausted and I can't do this at all, right? So you have to be willing to get humble to the tiniest degree, right? Not the things that I know I should do, but the things that I would do, that I will do. The tiniest thing. And that may mean I'm going to flick that light switch 16 times instead of 17. I'm going to go to that elevator that I feel overwhelming fear when I look at it, and I'm just going to look at it today. I'm not going in the elevator today. And to the extent that we're moving slightly forward, the very strange thing is the mind starts to let go. And this is actually a process of surrender and relief from the control tower that is not consumed with happiness. So the cure for mental health is always going to be in the faithful world. It has to be, because we're saying that the cure for all things is actually in the world of consciousness. And not relegated just to the body or the external environment or to the pattern that we have somehow or other found ourselves in, right? The control switch that we have found. And it's humbling and it's brutally honest, but it's the real work that must occur for us to find that smallest integer of movement. And that's okay, right? And one day we may look at that light switch and laugh, right? We may laugh at a previous version of ourselves. And we hope to, right? Like, we hope to, right? There's a nice quote I like. It says, the graveyards must be full of all the people I used to be. You know, it's like, how many versions have we tried on? And why are we trying them on? To exploit, right? We're trying all these different strategies on, right? And then the mind's just like, that's the one, and then makes a pattern for us to try and like accomplish that thing, right? So then as you're saying, oh, if you can put on a different pattern, if you can kind of go through that, and what is it going to take? Like humility. I gotta admit, like, yeah, there's a pattern going on. It might be kind of ugly, right? And then there's some progress that can happen. That can actually deal with our mental processes, right? If Guru Maharaj is saying that all suffering occurs within the mind, we do have to pay attention to that. We do have to contemplate, is that actually true? So that's one thing when it comes to mental health, mental stability. We're going, okay, actually in his mercy is also the resolution to all of these different things. And I can find it in his grace, even though my mind is doing a great job of resisting it. But so carefully and so slowly and so kindly, there can be some motion and some movement. And then I will leave Lavanya's last question, because it's actually complicated. First part of the question.
And if I remember, oh my gosh, so we'll go quickly, because I know there's some other questions as well, and we're kind of like
there's
pushing up
another one, but maybe we can leave that one for tomorrow. We can start tomorrow with.
We have a tomorrow session?
Yeah, you got to
Yeah,
do
whole
Oh, I didn't
day.
even know that. Jai.
How we don't mess about.
Okay, so thank you, Kaylee.
Not even 5 minutes.
The question, if I remember correctly, was on Sahajiya and how do we kind of protect ourselves from.
Yes, is it a fine line between pure devotion and sahajism, and how can we check these symptoms in ourselves? And how can we rid ourselves of low traits that are not?
I feel like I answered that part of it a bit.
those are a few three different things. Okay. Is it a fine line between Sahajism and pure devotion?
Yeah. Or a more obvious one, she's asking.
More obvious. Is it fine or is it obvious? Well, they're not anywhere close to being the same thing. Now, obvious or hidden, that's a matter of, that kind of gets down to the crux of what Sahajiya means. Because the whole problem with Sahajiyaism is that it looks at an external picture of whatever that pure devotion may look like at a particular time or a particular expression, and tries to mimic that, right? There's some, and it can happen in many different ways. Sometimes, in your mind you want to think that you have pure devotion. Sometimes in your body you want to, or physically you want to present to others that you have some particular spiritual stature. And sometimes you could say it has some aspect of fundamentalism, meaning it tries to fit the divine within the physical, right, within the external. So like one time I went to it was actually the temple of Srinathji in Rajasthan. I hope I can say that, but it was. And the guy who was there, we were with Srila Madhusudana Maharaj actually. And the guy who was there, the kind of head of the temple, he was kind of a little bit like, what are these guys doing here? So he had us come up to like make sure that we were, cool and everything. But there was like 3 men, like big, hairy men in his assembly room in saris. And they were like, the gopis kind of thing. And that's like one sort of, you could say, obvious version of Sahajism, where it's like you have this ideal of being a gopi and then you sort of take the physical presentation of that. But Sahajism ultimately means that you're looking at spiritual progression as an object to be attained and not something that is occurring naturally as a result of service connection. So Sahajism is when whatever kind of idealism you might have for spiritual perfection, you try to move to that in a forceful way. In other words, you try to colonize the spiritual world, right? You try to make it something that you can grab a hold of, right? And in many different ways, whether it's mental or physical, that false idea that I'm going to grab that and make it mine, that is ultimately Sahajism. And Guru Maharaj's teachings are essential to prevent Sahajism. Because Guru Maharaj is saying, and Srila Rupa Goswami is saying the same thing, this mood of the Chataka bird, this mood that the service will descend to you naturally, that you should accept the tiniest, slightest connection to the highest thing. And do your small seva, focus on your life at hand in the most authentic way that you can. And the real thing will descend of its own accord. And you do not want anything but that real thing. In fact, to be very suspicious inside yourself. Guru Maharaj, once I read, he said, if you have some feeling of, some spiritual feeling that you feel is spiritual, that it's welling up inside you, he said, you should resist that with all your might, to make sure it's like, and he said, if it is the real thing, it will come and overwhelm you. So never the false thing, never the feeling that I'm going to grab it and possess it, never the feeling that I'm going to present some show that I have something that I do not, but only the real thing. And if it means, like a Chataka bird is this, they say it's a mythical bird, but I think it's probably a real bird, that would only drink rainwater. And that means it will wait outside. And if there's no rain, it won't drink. And Guru Maharaj says, Rupa Goswami says, that's the mood we should have. Only the real thing from the real source and nothing else. And if it never comes, then I'll never drink. Right? No false feeling of attainment or capturing or in any way objectifying and then reaching the spiritual realm. We approach as a subject of that realm, meaning we are the subject, he is the super subject. We approach as something to be utilized by that realm, and we offer ourselves. And he may utilize us, they may utilize us, they may not. And when I say they, it means the world of the gurus, the higher teachings, the higher teachers. They may utilize us. And if they utilize us, then we have something to do. If they engage us, then we have something to do. If not, we will wait. And we will wait forever. But only the real thing. And so that teaching of Guru Maharaj, that's the bulwark against Sahajiyism. And the bulwark of our exploitive mentality entering into that spiritual world and trying to colonize it. Trying to make it something that we can objectify and capture. And I hope that I properly presented that. If there's anybody who has something to correct or add or anything, I would really appreciate it, because this is a very, very fine topic. Lavanyamai is a very great devotee, and I'm just trying to be utilized maybe to represent something real.